Hello, followers of Spartan. We are now in the. Ooh, you've got a name. We need to get your buttons and everything. We are currently in the Atlantic Highlands, which is part of New Jersey, part of Sandy Hook, basically. And you can't really see it unless I take the camera off and show you, which I might do later. But basically, there's a hook of sand that goes about 3 miles out and separates this bit of land from the Atlantic Ocean. And our next job is to go from here to a place called Cape May, which is about 117 miles away, or in terms of Spartan, a full 24 hours of sailing or thereabouts. And so we're gonna show you some weather windows of how that looks. We've basically been here since yesterday, and we think we're gonna be here till Saturday, and I'm gonna explain why. This is a tool called Luck Grib, and it basically lets us look at the weather over time using these Barbie little things, and I'll get Kath to explain them in a minute, but first I'll show you what happens. There's our little boat there, and we wanted to get it to down here. And if we leave on Thursday at 9, now there's our little boat moving. You can see it's moving, and just going back to say an hour out or so, we've got winds that are about 5 knots. That's half a little barb, and they're pointed almost against the boat, which is not good because that means we're going against the wind. So it would be against the wind, against the wind, against the wind. If we get stronger, we'd still be against the wind. Later, the wind would change, but so would our course, so that we'd still be against the wind. And then finally, about 12 hours in, we would start to see some wind that we could actually use, and that would diminish to almost nothing over time. So Thursday, not so great. It's also just a little unsettled. So let's try Friday. So if I just tweak this by pressing a few magic buttons, I can say that we're leaving on the 23rd. And now, when we drag this control around here and we see what it looks like to leave on Friday, where's our boat? Oh, there it is. So it's got the wind with it at the beginning, but there's not a lot. As you can see up here, there's about 5 knots of wind. And then later in the day, it starts to shift a lot and turns right against us. Well, not quite right against us, but turns a lot. And then it becomes fairly favorable. It would be a beam reach on the 2 to 3/4 of the way through the trip. And so it's kind of doable, but it looks a little disturbed, the whole thing. It just doesn't seem like, it seems like there's a lot of disruption going on in that weather pattern. So let's look at Saturday now. And I press some magic buttons, and this is what it will look like when we leave on Saturday. So once again, our boat takes off, and you can see we've got about 10 knots of wind on a broad reach, which is just ideal. And that sort of continues, becomes more of a beam reach, which is probably even better. Stays at 10 knots, stays at 10 knots, then it becomes a broad reach, stays at 10 knots, the whole way there. So Saturday is really the day that looks best for us. And Kath, you want to try to explain what these barbs are that we're showing people?
So first of all, this whole thing is called, I think, a grib. And a grib is a kind of a model that shows you what the weather is sort of, or particularly the wind is projected to look like over time. And so each one of these little barb things, you're supposed to be able to pick up quite a bit of information from each barb. So half of a barb is like about 5 knots of wind, I think.
Yep.
And then a whole barb is 10 knots, and then another half barb is 15 knots. And so you can see some of them have no barbs, you can see some of them have a barb and a half. And so that gives you an indication of the strength of the winds in that location relative to your boat. And it also gives you a pretty good indication. You can see that they rotate, so that will show you from which direction the wind's coming. And finally, when Tom talks about, beam reach and broad reach and all that stuff, it's really about whether the wind is going to be hitting the back or the aft of our boat, which is actually a pretty good point of sail, or hitting the middle of our boat, which is called a beam reach, which is also, as he's indicated, pretty good.
Yeah,
and,
that's pretty much the best.
yes,
Well,
that-
if you have enough wind, a broad reach is better. But for if the winds are fairly light, then a beam reach is generally better for our boat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're sitting here till Saturday. So we've pretty much just been on a nonstop romance marathon for days now.
Well,
I
it's our
mean,
second honeymoon.
yeah, today I really romanced Kath by making her walk in the heat about 2 miles to a marine store where we went really extravagant and we bought oil for the engine. And then we carried that oil back to town. And then we did stop and have a nice little meal at a diner. And because it was a bajillion degrees outside, we went into a movie theater and watched the third movie we've seen in 2 days. Because
that's what sailing's all about.
In 3 days, yeah, because that's what sailing's all about.
Yeah.
Because it's been so ridiculously hot, and because we have to kill time because we're waiting for this weather window to happen. And we really are as close as we can get to being out in the ocean. So we just need to have the weather come through for us so we can get going. So then it got even better. We changed the oil. So that was really, would you say that was great?
Yeah.
What was your favorite part about changing the oil?
My favorite part about changing the oil was that, I I really thought ahead, and I found a cookie sheet that fits my teeny tiny marine oven. And I planned to bring it on the boat and got it on the boat and had it in the oven. And Tom saw that cookie sheet and thought it would be just perfect for catching drips when he changed the oil.
Well, I had one hand on the filter and I had a bag around the filter, but it wasn't enough. Our filter doesn't come off from the bottom so that oil will just drip into, say, a bag. It comes off from the side. So the bag's coming off with the filter and the whole thing's really messy. I'll probably get better at it over time, but it's like probably the third time we've changed the oil since we got the boat. And the first time on this trip, but I'm sure we'll be doing it a lot later. Any rate, I had one hand free. I could see oil dripping. I could reach the stove. I knew the pan was there. I reached in, got it, and put it under. It's clean again. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, so if if people like my cookies in the future, you know why.
Yeah. They got that good marine taste.
Yeah, that's right.
Anything else?
We filled up water today.
Oh yeah, from a hose, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be drinking tea from a hose for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep, and we've also enjoyed a lot of showers in basically the equivalent of like a truck stop shower or a trailer park shower. We've had a number of really lovely shower events, in different marinas. So it's the whole thing. It's just a very romantic life.
It's enchanting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're waiting for a weather window. We hope to leave Saturday, and we'll keep you informed. Love you all, and all the best.
Cheers.
Cheers.